So moving on from there, that brings us to Kevin Alexander. And this is the fax that he sent. Any chance you'll sell digital versions of all your Cerebus in Hell issues? I'm going to buy your 300 digital issue series my next payday, and I would love to get the Cerebus in Hell series too. And I faxed back to him. This was back on March 9th that he faxed it. I didn't get back to him for about 2 weeks after that. Hi, Kevin. Sorry to be so long in getting back to you. Many, many thanks for the payday investment. I'm relaying this through Manly Matt Dow at a moment of service, and will be answering your question on Please Hold for Day Sim, God willing, air date April 6th, as well as everyone's questions Manly sent through to me today. See attached. Hope to, quote, see, unquote, you then. And then you wrote, and since, quote, past Dave, unquote, wrote check, quote, today Dave, unquote, can cash it. And of course, because I shone a light on something people weren't paying attention to, they want to complicate it. Case in point number one. I still don't know how to pronounce Miles' name, whether it's Mile or Neil, but I'll say Mile Lukic asked me. I noticed finally the offer of a copy of Dave Sim's Albatross 1 notebook for the payment of US $100 today. Sending US $100 is a pain here in the UK. It would be far easier to pay Dave via PayPal if that is an option. For example, would Dave accept Canadian $140 donated to him via cerebusdownloads.com, whatever the exchange rate is in Canadian dollars at the time of payment. Additionally, shipping to the UK is going to be eye-wateringly high, so the price would probably be higher. Any chance you could find out from Dave what the price for Albatross 1 is for those who are outside North America? Finally, in what form is the, quote, copy, unquote, of this notebook? Photocopies bundled together? An actual printed book? Well, I can say without fear of contradiction that apart from the coil binding on the copy of the notebook, it's a different, heavier coil than is on the original notebook, which is just thin metal, like you would find in any Staples or store like that sells notebooks. But literally, side by side, you couldn't tell them apart. And if you weren't looking at the coil binding, it just opened up to two random facing pages, and I had the notebook sitting next to it. You couldn't tell those apart. I can't tell them apart. So Mile concludes, thanks for your help. And thank you for your interest, Mile. Then Matt writes, I told him that paying through Cerebus downloads should be okay as long as he lets me, Eddie, or you know that is what the payment is for. He estimates $50 USD for shipping. Does that sound right? And the short answer to both of those questions is no. You can't order it from Cerebus downloads, and no, $50 US for shipping. That isn't right. We'll get to that. Case in point number two, Al Roney said, how about a PDF option on the notebook as well? I mean, presumably this could be an option, but would it still be $100 or less since it's digital and not physical? Case in point number three, Lee Thacker said, would 160 Canadian dollars cover the book and postage to the UK? At that point, you interrupt and go, see, it's about 140 Canadian for just the book. And I don't think $20 Canadian is going to cover shipping to His Majesty's Kingdom. Okay, lease us, but it is in His Majesty's kingdom. Good point, Manly Matt Dow. Case in point number 4, Glenn said, couldn't some of the pages of Dave's notebooks appear in the remastered trade paperbacks or Cerebus number 1 or number 2 as bonus content? That being said, I'd be interested in the best of Dave's notebooks in a comic like Pieces of Turtles 8 with commentary by Dave. I think that's the end of the case in point. Yes, that's the end of the cases in point. Okay, let's start with Glenn. And no, there isn't going to be commentary. That's one of those things that, at least for the foreseeable future, the only commentaries that I'm writing are going to be in the canned portfolios. And that's because I'm trying to do an explanation-ectomy on my business life as the president of Aardvark-Vanaheim, where I know the answer to these questions, but explaining them gets complicated, as we will see here as I move on to explaining it. Like I say, I'm going to try to conduct as much of AB business right here on Please Hold for Dave Sim as possible for the foreseeable future. The reason for that is, one, it qualifies as content, which is what you definitely want when you're trying to keep a moment of Cerebus supplied with daily posts. Number 2, it's easier to explain something verbally than to type it out. And 3, I think it's a good business idea generally. It's one of those, probably Dave Sim's the only person on the planet that thinks this way, particularly as someone who owns a business. But we're in a time period where openness and transparency are buzzwords, but they're actually the best policy that you can have as well. It's if you do everything openly and in front of your customers, then they're not going to get this suspicion that they're getting the wool pulled over their eyes. I'm not, believe me, with 96 paying customers left, I'm not pulling the wool over anybody's eyes. I'll tell you exactly what I'm doing, and I'll tell you exactly why I'm doing it. And you can either go, well, that makes sense to me, or go, well, I wouldn't do it that way, but it's Dave's company, and it is at least all of the cards are on the table, all of them are face up, to the extent that that's possible for me to do that. So let's take this out for a test drive. Addressing this to George Katz's and Eddie Kana. What I really need is a fee splitter at Cerebus downloads. Right now, Gerhard is getting 25% of the Dave Sim Patreon money, which I'm sure he doesn't want and doesn't feel entitled to. And I don't want to be the Cerebus downloads bookkeeper. When I get in the list of customers for Cerebus downloads, which Eddie faxes me every month, I don't want to sit down and say, okay, here's the formerly 2 different descriptions of what it is that people are buying, and now there's 8 different descriptions, and each of these have to be divided up different ways. I don't want to do that, so it's easier to just pay Gerhard 25% of the total, rounding up. I.e., Cerebus downloads for March brought in $1,009 Canadian, minus Venus P's, $140 Canadian that he donated, hoping to get an Albatross 1, which isn't being offered at Cerebus Downloads at the moment. So Gerhard got a check. I try and cut him a check as close to the beginning of the month as possible. So Gerhard got $250 out of $860, which is more than 25%. So I always try to err on that side. It's, this is not happy days are here again, money for Gerhard. So to whatever extent that I can round it up to a larger amount that still makes sense, I try to do that. So public AV meeting number 1. George, is there an app for separating the payments into 2 separate accounts? i.e., Scott Y in Hawaii this month ordered Digital Cerebus, High Society, Church and State 1, and Church and State 2. And thank you, Scott Y, if you're listening in. Gerhard should get 25% of any book, Church and State 2 and forward to the last day, and 12.5% of Church and State 1, since he only worked on the second half of it, and nothing on Cerebus High Society. Not being a tech guy, that's my question. If there's some really simple way to do that, to just say, okay, I just have to put this in this category, this in that category. And ideally, there would be a Gerhard account at cerebusdownloads.com that here's the money that goes to Gerhard, already separated out based on what the person ordered. Eddie, the fallback position would be you being the Cerebus Downloads bookkeeper and emailing Gerhard his cut every month. I'm hoping we can avoid that by automating it, if there's an easy way or even a slightly complicated way to automate it, since you already have enough on your plate without having to sit down with Cerebus Downloads revenues at the end of every month and figure out all of the stuff. But I definitely wanted you included on this because this is obviously after Dave Sim dies and you're the president of Aardvark-Vanaheim, this is you need to know that this is the structure for all of the material that is Cerebus per se, the 6,000-page graphic novel. This is how it breaks down, and this is how the compensation is supposed to go. With these monies going to Gerhard and these monies going to Aardvark-Vanaheim. This is the reason that I said I would sell Albatross 1 by mail if you send a check for $100 US. And it's the reason I sent Vitas P of Waltham, Massachusetts, a refund check for $100 US when he paid for an Albatross 1 with a $140 Canadian donation at Cerebus Downloads. We aren't there yet, Vitas, but we are working on it, starting here, and hopefully it's not something that's going to stretch into weeks or months to accomplish, but if it does, I still think it's worth doing. So addressing everybody listening to this, generally, if you want to know, well, how does this apply to me? If you really, really have to pay at Cerebus Downloads for Albatross 1, and you really, really have to do it now before we get all of this worked out, until, or maybe unless we get a fee splitter structure operating, it's going to be $140 Canadian plus a 25% Gerhard tax, $35 Canadian. I had really looked into international shipping, which is actually not that much more. It's $35 Canadian surface to the UK. So what you're talking about is if you pay $35, Canada Post wouldn't even consider the package to be missing for, I think it's 2 months, 2.5 months. So, if you want to go for the $35, it'll get there, but it'll be an enormous surprise just about the time that you're forgetting about it. $70 Canadian by air. So, bottom line, Cerebus downloads right now. If you're in the U.S., $140 Canadian plus $30 Canadian postage plus $35 Gerhard tax would be $205 Canadian. That's what you would be donating if you absolutely have to have an Albatross one now before we have the fee splitting going on. Or you can just send a check, cashier's check or money order for $100 US payable to AV, and it's all covered. So the difference is between $100 US and $205 Canadian. If you're outside the US or Canada, it's $140 Canadian plus $35 Canadian postage plus $35 Gerhard tax, $210 Canadian. That's with surface post delivery. The platinum option, if you're outside the US or Canada, $140 Canadian plus $70 Canadian postage plus $35 Gerhard tax, $245 Canadian by airmail. My best advice is wait and see if we can come up with a fee splitter structure sometime in the near or foreseeable future. And Eddie, if you can just give George Katzis a heads up on this. I don't know if George has been listening lately, but if he is, well, there's your mission if you decide to accept it, Mr. Phelps. Okay, same problem with a digital Albatross. If the revenues on Albatross 1 can be split directly into the AV account, there's no need for a Gerhard tax. So best be patient until I can set a solo Dave Sim /AV price on it. Which brings us to Kevin. Hello, Kevin. This is compounded with Cerebus in Hell with a question mark, where the fee splitter would have to route each of the 12 volumes into AV, Sandy Batwell, David Birdsong, Benjamin Hobbs, Laura McFarland, Matt Dow, and Sean Robinson accounts. Ideally, each person would have access to their own account, which, let's face facts, is going to be minuscule. But they would have access, and whenever there's a worthwhile amount to be transferred to their own PayPal account, i.e. more than the fees PayPal is going to charge them for the transfer, they could transfer it. Which brings us, I think, to Eddie. Hello, Eddie. Cerebus Downloads was a fait accompli when you became the AV presidential successor. You're on the internet. You use websites of one kind or another, which I don't. Can we treat this as an opportunity to create a creator's rights style template website? CIH?downloads.com. Whatever fee splitter structure you or George can come up with, and a formula as to how that's set up. And if this isn't something that you or George can do easily, can you quarterback somebody who does websites setting up a website like that? AV will pay for it again. less for the millions in filthy lucre it's going to generate, and more for the necessity of a template creators' rights website structure for publications with multiple contributors. I've already talked to Rolly about looking at the credits in each of the 12 volumes and counting the number of pages written by each contributor to that volume, so that anyone buying any given volume for, say, $8 Canadian, that $8 automatically gets routed into the appropriate accounts. Right now, Rolly's priorities are getting caught up on me finishing the Cerebus archive. At the moment, scanning all the photos and descriptions for the photo archive, packaging them in manga plastic bags and backing boards, and packaging those in stay flats with Cerebus archive stickers with the years on them, 1972 to 2010. And he's making pretty good progress. He was already up to 1988. I haven't been back to Camp David to see exactly what he got done today, but now that Kickstarter 10 is over, he was able to put in a good part of his day on it. Our theory, Rolly's and mine together, being that it's better to finish all of one thing than to try to move everything forward simultaneously. This will be followed by Rolly scanning the latter days original artwork and negatives, a higher priority, and then by a Cerebus in Hell with a question mark website. If there is a Cerebus in Hell with a question mark website, we could also sell physical copies of sorts of Cerebus in Hell with a question mark with different shipping costs depending on how many volumes they're ordering, which could make for a great digital sales pitch right there, since digital would be a lot cheaper than shipping even individual books or a complete set of 12 books. It's moving stuff around is getting very expensive. I think I mentioned when we were talking about Kickstarter 10 last time that I noticed that there was $4,000 US for the shipping charges. And I went, that's an awful lot of money. That's, I think we're probably overcharging, and I think we can cut that on the next Kickstarter. Now that I've just paid the bill for the shipping, it worked out to $4,900 Canadian. So it's definitely within the ballpark. I was thinking this has got to be at least $1,000 too much. It's like it's much later in the day than that, Grandpa. Okay, now I'm going to go to the March 24 facts from Eddie Conant. Hi, Dave. Remastered versions of Foreman Void and The Last Day are now up on Cerebus downloads. Yay! Also, Sean was wondering, quote, I had just completing books as I go and waiting for Dave to need them for printing. But if he would rather, I can take some of the books that I have already banked that have not been printed yet and start preparing those for screens as well. I've got Melmoth, Guys, Rick's Story, and I think one other ready to go, unquote. This would mean remastered, quote, computer screen, unquote, versions of these books would be available on Cerebus download before the remastered print version. Eddie says, I don't see a problem with that, but wanted to run it by you first in case there's something I'm missing. Note, for the record, don't make the same mistake that I did, that the Cerebus download remastered screen versions would work as files to submit for print versions. Dave has prepped these files specifically for screen. Eddie. And I did not know that. I had no idea that the scans at Cerebus downloads on the remastered are specifically intended for screens and are not intended for print. So that leads to, Sean, can you please produce screen versions of all of Cerebus in Hell to date and bill AV at your hourly rate? Because those are going to be needed, whether they just go on a Cerebus download site or whether they go on a Cerebus in Hell with a question mark site. Definitely we're in a situation where we don't just want to do 12 volumes of Cerebus in Hell. We want to do the 30 or so issues that came out after that and make those available as one giant digital package at a Cerebus in Hell with a question mark site. I would qualify that by saying, Sean's rate is the highest rate of anybody getting paid by Aardvark-Vanaheim, and that was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, so I assume it's even higher than that. If you can start the process and send an invoice for, let's say, $1,000 US, and with a time span on it. This is when I started doing it. This is how long it took me to do these. Here's what you're paying $1,000 for. Then I can look at it and say, okay, here's your $1,000. Can you do one of these like every 2 months or every 2.5 months? So, AV isn't paying you $1,000 every 2 weeks or every 8 days or however long it takes you to do that. And also, Sean, continue to remaster the trades as physical books, but I'm going to qualify that as only as he's getting paid by patrons for whom it's a priority to have the remastering done for print books. And here I'm definitely thinking of Dan P., who sent in, $4,000 and some odd US specifically for the remastering. I'm going to be giving Dan P. Sean's address and saying, this is going to be between you and Sean, where anytime, you think you have some leftover money, maybe not the 4,000, but even a portion of that, and you want it to go directly to remastering, there's no point in sending it to me because Aardvark-Vanaheim Administration 1 isn't in charge of remastering. There's no way I can foresee doing Cerebus trade paperbacks from now on. So it's completely Administration 2, which is why this is all getting addressed to Eddie and Sean. I really don't have any hands-on participation with that. And I would include, for Sean, including your commentaries. The commentaries I don't think will be in the digital versions, but the commentaries are a major part of the remastered print editions, even though remastered print editions aren't being done. So the sooner the quicker on getting those done. And at that point, Eddie, as the second administration president of Aardvark-Vanaheim, will have all of the trade paperbacks ready to be printed if it makes sense to print them. I have no idea what the post Dave Sim Aardvark-Vanaheim situation is going to be, and the demand or demand in quotation marks for Cerebus trade paperbacks. Okay, at that point you go, you see what happens when you try to make one guy happy? And it's like, yes, but that's, it's not altogether less difficult to make 96 people happy, which is definitely the job one for First Administration President Dave Sim. Try not to lose any backers if you can help it, and try to make as many of them happy as possible with what you're doing. Okay, and then you say, sir, sorry for making a simple plan unintentionally more complex, but I figured you weren't going to say no to easy money. So let me know what the Aardvark-Vanaheim president wants to do about any of this. Well, there you go. So any comments from you? That's the longest preamble to Please Hold we've ever had. We're up to 40 minutes here.
I made a couple of notes. When I send Sean a message about, hey, we specifically addressed you, here's the audio clip of what Dave's talking about. I'm also going to send it to Hobbs, because Hobbs may have screen-ready versions of the issues he's worked on. Or it may be as simple as go into the file, futz around for 5 minutes, and then it's done.
Right. And we don't know that, because that's not something that we traffic in.
I mean, I know that was, it's been brought up behind the scenes when we're emailing back and forth about, are we ever going to do digital versions? And the big stopping point for the guys on the back end is just, like doing them as like a Kickstarter extra or something, was how do we keep these files from ending up on the bootleg sites? And I keep thinking, guys, nobody's scanning these comics and making bootlegs. That was years ago. That was an issue of, hey, I keep checking the bootleg site. It was Birdsong going, I keep checking the bootleg sites and nothing's there. And I'm like, you really want a bootleg? And that's when I started the Aardvark bootleg that I was drawing. That's on my, okay, you should get around to this eventually list.
Right.
And so I don't think it's really going to be as big of a problem as 3 or 4 years ago CIH team, thought it was going to be of, if we give one guy a copy of SimCity, that, he's going to put it up and then, we're not going to make any money. I'm like, guys, we're not making any money now.
Exactly. And the other, I'll interrupt, but we'll get back to your notes. Kevin this is the only person who's ever expressed interest in it to me. So Kevin might be the only customer, and this could end up costing Aardvark-Vanaheim, $3,000, $4,000 to put together a Cerebus in Hell with a question mark website, and all I'm going to do is sell $40 worth of digital files, and you'll get 79 cents, and Sean Robinson will get 32 cents, and Benjamin Hobbs will get $2.12, and it's like, okay, if we knew this was going to happen, we probably wouldn't do this, but it is, to whatever extent it's possible, to make the stuff available to interested buyers. Once the Cerebus in Hell website exists, if we can get it together, the feminist dictatorship isn't going to last forever, where people know you don't read Cerebus in Hell, and you don't recommend it, and you don't review it, and you don't say anything nice about it, and you hope nobody ever finds out that you actually buy it. 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 40 years from now, when the wheels have completely come off of feminist dictatorship, this is going to be, Cerebus in Hell with a question mark, I think, is going to be a definite, iconic, early 21st century. This is what actually was going on. This is what these people were making fun of. And once again, it was, this can't even be alluded to in polite company. And how did we ever let that happen as late as the beginning of the 21st century? So back to your notes.
The other note is, and I'm gonna get this done when we're done, when I go down and start loading up everything to start the long, arduous process that the podcast portion of Please Hold, they keep trying to make it impossible for me to do it, and I think I figured out my final workaround, which is I'm going to record using their stupid app, I download the files, and then instead of reloading them onto their website and using their tools, because they took all my tools away, I'm just going to start with the video portion, and I can rip the audio from the video to put onto the podcast. The app I used was called Anchor. Anchor got bought by Spotify, and Spotify has slowly taken away any reason to use this app.
Really?
Yeah, the latest is they took away the editing tools, and the editing tools was pretty much a play, fast forward, pause, trim right here. I mean, they were very simple and basic, and now they want me to go through another app that's AI enabled and can do this and do that and makes a transcript and all this, it quote unquote neat stuff. And I used it last month, and I'm like, this is stupid as hell. I can do this easier by avoiding them. But as I upload everything, I'm going to print out a waiver and mail it to you, and I'm going to fax it of, I waive any money from service in hell unless we sell, I want to say, High Society Volume 1 first printing money.
Okay.
Like, Concord money comes in, yeah, sure, cut Matt a check, but if it's $2.08, you can hang on to the $2.08. I don't need it that badly.
Okay. But again, it's, somewhere up ahead, Janice and Bullwinkle could be 90-year-old women going, well, Dad had this cut of this issue, and right now it's worth $1 billion. Granted, a loaf of bread costs $1 billion, but it would be nice to have it.
Oh, well, like I said, I mean, if it's high society money, yeah, sure. Remember that I wrote like 35 strips.
Okay.